Subscribe to the FocusTalk TV YouTube channel. Follow at FocusTalk TV on Instagram and Twitter, and join in on the conversation on the FocusTalk TV Facebook page. And in the meantime, remember to stay focused. We're right back with you with Focus Talk, the thought-provoking, solution-oriented talk show, daring to make a difference in our communities. We're talking. Why? Because the answers really matter. Today, I have in the studio Brother Duane Muhammad, who is an absolute wealth of information. Duane, thank you so very much for being a part of today's show. And today, I didn't have to ask very many questions. I just sat back.
Saying I'm a chatterbox.
No. I am saying that you are a walking encyclopedia with a lot of information, and I yield to knowledge so that I can gain a little knowledge for myself. So I thank you for coming in and sharing the wealth of knowledge that you are with me as well as the listeners here at WKKC.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask you, give me some information about the National Learning Committee.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a 501c3 I developed about maybe 3 years ago. And as a trustee in the village of Dalton, I couldn't mix what I was doing as far as helping the children because there are some standards that you cannot violate by Illinois statute. Remember I told you, in order to be an honest politician, you have to know the law. So I said, if I develop this 501c3, I can help children separate from my intermingling funds for the village of Dalton.
Duane, I apologize. Let me stop you just for a moment because you said something that was just that was so profound. In order to be a politician, you must know the law.
Yes.
And so is it safe to assume that a lot of politicians don't know the law?
It's both. Some know it, some don't. And when you violate those laws, there's always a warning, of course. They're not just going to throw you in jail. When it comes to collecting monies, you know, what we call D2s. There are forms that you have to fill out and turn into the state. How much you can collect from a person and how much can be reported. If you give me money and I don't report it on my D2s, that's illegal. You give me money because you want a position in politics and I'm promising you something, they call that pay to play. That's against the law. You can go to jail for that. It can be $500, it can be $600, it can be $12,000. So what I try to do as an elected official, if you want to give me money, I have my person that you put it in their hand and they'll do whatever they do with you because I don't handle any money because I'm still learning the laws. So by me knowing that, I developed the 501c3 so that any monies coming into the 501c3, which is the National Learning Committee, will be strictly for that program and helping young people to get book bags with school supplies for the upcoming school year. We give monies to schools for young people who can't afford school uniforms. Now, the school cannot identify this. This is about learning the law again. You can't go to a school and ask them, what are the students whose parents can't afford certain things? They can't give you that information. So what you do is you deal with the social workers of the school, and they'll tell you, well, we got about maybe 20 students that parents, they need some help. So my National Learning Committee will give the school money, but put it in the hands of the social worker. And then she would in turn buy the uniforms and give it to those children. So that's, you know, learning the law and learning what lines not to cross. It's very important because, again, I'm a politician doing this, but I have to separate it from the monies collected from my DuaneMuhammad.com, which is my political site. I got to keep them totally separate. And you probably heard the shenanigans going on when Hillary ran against Trump. And they were talking about her and Bill's foundation. Now, of course, my foundation is nowhere near that. I wish it was, and I could help more people. But they were saying, you know, they were influencing people by putting all that money in the foundation, that they got political favors. So you have to keep them separate, and that's what I try to do.
One would assume that considering that you're entering into the political arena, that you have some sort of information or knowledge about what it is that you're venturing into without learning by happenstance, kind of like stepping on a mine. You know, oh, it's a mine there, but at that point, it's too late because you lost a couple legs.
Yeah.
But then again, there isn't a politician school that you would go to. Everything is OJT.
Well, yes and no. When you become a trustee, you sit down with what we call the village attorney, and they tell you about certain laws, and there are workshops also. We have the South Suburban Manager Association, where we actually learn about the law of politics. They don't teach you how to politic, but they teach you about the law. They teach you about Robert's rules, how we conduct a meeting in a more civilized manner, how we pass ordinance or resolutions or laws. So there are some learning that you can do on your own. There are books that are given to you, but it's up to the individual. You know, it's like in any field, you have to have intellectual curiosity. And once a politician's open their mouth, you can tell those who study and those who know. And you constantly have to have an attorney there to keep you in check. Like we have a very basic thing called the Open Meetings Act. There are 6 trustees. Only 2 trustees can meet at a time. If there's more than 2 trustees, that's an open meeting. You got to have a clerk there. You got to post that you're going to meet 48 hours before you meet. So it's okay if 2 politicians talk to one another, but if a third one comes into the picture, then you're violating what we call the Open Meetings Act. So those are the things that you learn in your workshops, like you just said, on-the-job training. And that's the most important thing to know. Know the rules, know the regulations, so therefore you stay an honest politician, because ignorance of the law is unacceptable. You stand in front of that judge talking about, I'm sure you all have seen the judge shows that I didn't know that. So ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's up to you as an individual to learn the law so that you can continue to be the most effective elected official that you can be.
Now, Duane, recently in February, if I'm not mistaken, you ran for mayor of Dalton.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
That was another good experience. Like I said, I've been a trustee for 2 years, and I was dissatisfied with the direction that the village of Dalton was going. The current mayor and I did not see eye to eye. We have some philosophical and political differences. And I made it a point not to discuss those openly in a way that would cast any kind of aspersions on him. Mm-hmm. Him and I have had hour-long talks about disagreements, because I was always taught as a man, when you have a disagreement with a man, you confront him on those disagreements. And I did. And I told him I didn't like the direction that he was headed and some of the things that he was doing that I took umbrage with. And he refused to make the change, and I felt that maybe I can do a better job. And I told him that. And upon me doing that, I ran for mayor. And I learned that before you run for mayor, you have to set your roots into the community. They have to know you. They didn't know me. So, but running for mayor, I planted the seed. And when I run again, and I promise to do that in the next 4 years, I plan with the will of God to be successful in that run.
Okay. All right. Now, was there anything about that particular experience that stuck out to you that you would be able to utilize for the next step?
Yes. Again, you have to talk to people. You can't run a campaign by metrics. I had one of the most brilliant people help me in my campaign. She knew numbers. This woman read statistics books, trigonometry and calculus books for pleasure. She was a numbers person. She had all the numbers correct. But the thing is, it's the same with Hillary Clinton. She had all the metrics correct in the computer, but you got to get out there and touch people. People can't say that they're just going to vote for you. You got to follow up with them. You got to touch that person 5 or 6 times. Even if I call you and you say you support me, I got to continue to follow up and make sure that you went out to that poll and you touched that screen and you voted for me. And how do you do that? There's metrics, there's ways that you follow up by ringing that doorbell, following up, talking to them, getting on the phone, and you got to do that on a consistent basis. You got to have volunteers to do it. So it was a great learning experience for me. It wasn't a defeat, it was a learning experience for me. I learned so much, and I learned so much about our people. The majority of the people do not care about the political process whatsoever, and I have great empathy, and I understand that without a doubt. If you look at the political situation here in the state of Illinois, if you look at it federally speaking, it's a turnoff to most people. You know, when they see the arguing and the fighting and the shenanigans that goes on, they just turn their nose up to it and they keep on going. So what you have to do as an elected official, you have to reach them individually and convince them that they have to be part of the political process. Because I say it on my website that democracy is not a standby event. You have to get involved. You must get involved because you have control over the police department. You have control over the fire department. You have control over the budget, which we do. I actually sit down and interview the chief of police. The chief of police that we have right now, he was being interviewed during the Sandra Blanche incident. And I told the other trustees, I want to interview this chief first. If he gives me the wrong answer, there's no way he's going to be the chief of this city or village. And my first question to him was, what do you think of the Sandra Blanche situation? Don't you believe that woman would be here right now if that officer was more sensitive to the black community? And I'm bracing, waiting for his answer. He said, I have to disagree with you, trustee. I'm like, okay, he's out of here. And his point was, it's not about being sensitive. He should have been more professional. That was a petty stop that he pulled her over. There's nothing to do with her not using her signal. And he supposed to de-escalate the situation. He escalated the situation. So as he explained to me about the police officer's lack of training and not being professional, he had my vote of confidence. We become very close. He's a very professional police chief, but you have the power to hire and fire the police chief. You have the power to hire and fire the fire chief. Mm-hmm. You have the power to hire and fire the head of public works. So when you get involved with that, you understand the power of a budget, and that's very important.
I can't help but interject here as far as having the power and utilizing the power, yes. Because it seems as if, though, that it is backwards in the African American community, yes. Whereas the politicians are controlling the community as opposed to the community controlling the politicians. This is what I want you to do. This is how I want you to do it. If you don't do it this way, the way that I've instructed you, then you lose your job.
Yes.
It is the other way around, because in communities such as Winnetka or Palatine or Burr Ridge, it works that way. But in Roseland or West Lawndale or in other communities that are here in the Chicago area, it doesn't. And so I'm curious as to, in your opinion, what happened?
Well, think of it like right now. I don't know how much your viewers or listeners watch the political channels. And if you look at Trump right now, let's use him as a perfect example. He has what's called a base. About, I think maybe 36 to 40% will support Donald Trump by putting on a gasoline jacket and running through hell with him, no matter what he does. He said himself, I was on Fifth Avenue and I shot somebody right now, I wouldn't lose no support from his base. What happens is these politicians have a base, and it's a small base, because I told you the majority of people don't go out and vote. The majority of the people aren't in the process. What I've learned as an elected official, we have what we call a voter roll. It shows the people who are actually registered to vote. The majority of those people on the rolls do not vote. Mm-hmm. For example, in the village of Dalton, you have over 10,000 people who are registered voters. On a municipal election, you may have 2,000 that may come out and vote. So as an elected official, what I do, I'll get my base. And as long as I got that small base, I'll win year after year, because the majority of people are not involved. So now it becomes my fiefdom. And that's what happens with politicians. They look at that small number that come out to get them over the line, and they do whatever they want to do because that base supports them, good or bad. Now, there's some in the base may peel off because they start seeing you as the dirty person that you are, and they become part of that large number that don't get involved in the political process. So you got to have good elected officials that's going out there door to door, that's meeting people one by one and convincing them that they got to be involved in the process. But the only way you convince them to get involved in the process, they got to see the honesty and integrity in you. They got to see that you're a person of your word. They got to see that you're a person of good character, because the word politician is low down there with congressmen, used car salesmen, and the list goes on and on. So it's a job. When I ring your doorbell and I say I'm Trustee Muhammad, yeah, well, what do you want? Well, you here to raise our taxes. You know, they have a very jaundiced thought about you. But when I get through, if you invite me in your house, especially if you let me sit at your kitchen, I'm going to convert you. And the way I convert you is to show you that I'm the real deal. I'm not here just for your vote, but I want to let you know that you need to get involved in the process if you want to see a change in your community. There are over 1,200 homes, over 1,100 homes in the village of Dalton that's either in pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, or bank sale. Now, how does that affect you? That means that's probably 1 or 2 homes on your block that are vacant. When you're driving up to your home, you don't want to see vacant homes on your block. So what does that got to do with you as a voter? You have to get involved in the process to put the elected officials' feet to the fire to make sure they clean up your community, make your community a safe place to live. And that's by you getting involved, getting in the politicians' face and making them do the job that they're supposed to do, because they're doing exactly like you described before, because they see that the electorate is not involved. They're distant. They're looking at reality TV. They want to know what happened on Power and the housewives of whichever one is on right now. That's where our mind is at. But they got to get on the elected officials and make them do the job that they're supposed to do.
Now, isn't that a part? Isn't that part and parcel of what we should be doing as far as educating the children from the very beginning, so that they understand the 3 branches of government, understand the process in and of itself? However, I don't think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if they still teach civics.
No, I don't think
in
civics.
School.
The only part of civics I believe that they get exposed to when they have to do the 8th grade, I think it was the Constitution test. Mm-hmm. But civics classes, no. The legislative, executive, and judicial branch, they would know. The foreigners would know because they have to pass tests in order to get citizenship. Mm-hmm. They know about the functioning of government more than the average citizen because, as you said,
and it shows.
Yeah, and it's just not taught anymore in the schools. And then the parents, if the parents aren't involved, they're not going to teach the children. It's usually the parents who are involved in the political process that actually teach the children. But as a whole, generally speaking, majority do not. They're turned off by it. And you can easily see why they're turned off, especially in what we call national politics with Trump being in office and there being no real strong leadership in the Democratic Party. People just kind of turn away from it now. Anytime you get a guy like Bernie Sanders, a guy look like he combs his hair with a blow dryer and disheveled suits, but yet his message was reaching the millennials because he was saying what young people want to hear. But most young people are turned off by politics. So it seems like the Democrats and people should study what his message was and package that message and take it again, because most people just didn't like the packaging of Bernie Sanders. They said, oh man, that guy's not going to win. He looks like an insurance salesman. He sells encyclopedias or something. But his message, if you listen to it, it made plenty sense. Healthcare for all. And then he showed you mathematically how you could do it. But his packaging, his marketing just wasn't there to reach the masses of people. And again, a lot of people want the razzle dazzle. They want the handsome, debonair, articulate leader. And that's what we do. We're very superficial people. They say, what's her name was the worst candidate? Hillary Clinton. They talked about her jumpsuits and the way she wore her hair and she looked tired. All that superficial stuff, not going into the substance of what you need to go when it comes to electing politicians.
Duane, let's shift gears just for a moment. Sure. Because needless to say, we're running out of time. And I thought we had more, but what's your role with the Final Call?
Wow. What's my role with the Final Call? Well, the Final Call, I remember selling my papers on the street, and this old church woman heard me saying, final call, final call. And she said, don't you know what you're telling people when you say the final call? I said, yes, ma'am. It's the Final Call. This is our newspaper. We publish ourselves. We're a black-owned operation. That's the final call to the Lord. That's when the Lord is calling you. I said, well, ma'am, how many calls do we have to make to our people before we come together in unity? She took it on a spiritual level, but the Final Call is really the newspaper of the Nation of Islam. Mm-hmm. My role with the Final Call is I am the founder of the Nation of Islam's video department. Minister Farrakhan, when him and I met in we first met in 1972, and then later on we met again in about 1977 when I was doing a project at Columbia College. He was in Rebuilding the Nation. Then we met again in 1981 182. And he was selling his message on audio cassettes. And I look around here, as you see, you do not have an audio cassette. Everything is done digitally.
No.
And at that time, 1982, I said, Brother Minister, you need to put your message on VHS. VHS was a big thing now, JVC, VHS. He said, well, brother, put a proposal together. And I said, you need a TV studio. And he said, put it together. So I called a few of my friends at CBS, ABC, and NBC and told them, look, we want to develop a studio with the Nation of Islam at the Final Call Administration Building. They said, we'll do it on only one issue. If you would resolve this one issue for us, can we meet Minister Farrakhan if we do this? I said, I guess you can. Yeah, it's for him. They came, we did the wiring, ran it, got the cameras together, sound studio, the whole bit. While we were in the middle of working one day, the minister came down and met. By the way, these workers were white. I had maybe 2 black workers with me. The majority of them were white engineers that I knew through the years. And when you talk about being nervous, they were meeting the minister like I was meeting Michael Jackson. I said, man, I shook Minister Farrakhan's hand. Fast forward, we finished the project. I asked, give me your invoice, guys. What do you charge me? Man, what do you mean charge? Man, we got to meet the minister. They didn't even charge us to put the studio together. We jerry-rigged a lot of stuff, but we got the studio going. If you look at any video from the year 1983 up until 1989, it was all shot at the Final Call Administration Building on 79th Street. What I did to train up people, I took members of the Nation of Islam, housewives, students, grandfathers, grandmothers, and taught them television production. And that's how we got the video department started. And it's been 30-something years since then. We've traveled with the minister all over the world. Cuba, Iran, Iraq, New York, Memphis, Mississippi, Korea, Australia, you name it. We've been there to document his speeches, to put them in archives, to distribute them, to sell. And the stuff that you see on YouTube is all from the Final Call production.
Wow.
But it's not just me, it's a team of people. And I try to put the credit on my students because oftentimes I can't make some of those trips. Mm-hmm. And these are people who travel with the minister, never been out of Illinois. You know, they had to get a passport to get out of the country. They've never seen where they look at a license plate, instead of having numbers, it's got some calligraphy on it that they can't even read. Some of them say, man, if I never did this, I never would have gotten out of the States. You know, and it's a blessing to be a part of something that I helped to start in the Nation of Islam from my background in television. So my role as a director of the video department is to teach and train those up so that one day I can retire. Actually, I told these words to the minister, and of course he laughed. He said, retire? I said, yeah, brother minister, you know, I want to retire at 50. I said, 50, brother, you die on your post. And I thought he was being facetious, of course, because I want to retire at 50. I've been working since I was 2. And he kept saying it. And he said, brother, when do you think I'm going to retire from my post? And the minister's 80-something years old. So he convinced me that I'm not retiring. So what I'm doing, I'm just pulling back from a few things, and I train up the young to take over and do most of the things that I didn't do in the beginning. The running and the gunning and catching up, and you know, I can't do that anymore. I can, but I think I've done enough. You know, 20 years at NBC, starting the video operation with the Nation of Islam in 1983. I mean, that's over 30-some years. Mm-hmm. If you add all the years together, I'm not even that old. So how could that be? You know, I started in the very beginning. I worked at Muhammad Speaks newspaper at the age of 16. So my introduction to media was as a junior in high school. So that's all then I worked at a television station, a small independent station for a few years, then a large TV station. So after that, you figure, okay, I've done enough. But again, I can't retire. I got all my limbs. I can still see, hear, taste, feel, and I still have all this knowledge I need to impart upon young people.
Indeed, indeed. And I thank you for imparting just a portion of that knowledge with us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Would you do me a favor?
Sure.
Would you promise to come back?
Absolutely.
All right.
Positively.
I thank you so very much for your time, for your dedication, for your sincerity.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that very much. And please know that the door here at Focus Talk is always open. You don't have to knock. Just come on in.
I will be back. I will be back.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Duane Muhammad. This is Dennis Snipe, and I want to remind you, if you can't be the highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. Because it isn't by size that you win or that you fail. Be the best at whatever you are. Stay focused. We'll talk again real soon.
You're watching FocusTalk TV
with your host, Dennis Snipe.
Subscribe to the FocusTalk TV YouTube channel. Follow at FocusTalk TV on Instagram and Twitter, and join in on the conversation on the FocusTalk TV Facebook page. And in the meantime, remember to stay focused.
Joe.
Blackula.